welcome everyone to this episode of Dive Beyond Sport. So without further ado, Jack Law, welcome.
Hello everyone. Hi. Good to be here.
10 years later, when you reflect, what is the value of that Olympic gold medal?
I mean, aside from the physical of, I've got an accolade now that I will never lose. I've got an MBE because of it, which made my grandma, while she was with us, very proud. I guess not much. Yeah, not much. Like, it's the best thing I've ever done, and it's the highest I've ever achieved, but, it's just a competition. And I happen to win it. And the biggest one you can physically do. But the thing that I look back on with the most joy and pride is the people I was with, the friends that I was with at the time, my family being out there, the experience rather than the actual accolade. Like, yeah, I will always be Olympic champion, and that is awesome. Like, there's so few people that can say that. And what an achievement, and it's obviously not to be undermined. But actually, when I look back at it, the best thing about it was the whole experience of the competition and being there with my best friends, competing alongside my quite literal best friend. Like, we lived together, we trained together, we did everything together, competing alongside that. And for everything that I'd overcome, but everything that he'd overcome as well, just being able to share that moment together, I think that the accolade itself means a lot, but it's not the main part of what I'm proud of, really. If that really makes sense. I don't know if I can really quite quantify and put it into words. It's just like the journey getting there is the best thing. The destination is great. The destination is unbelievable. It's top tier, but I'm going to look back and be able to show, hopefully one day, kids or grandkids a great physical item that means something. But actually, when I'm on my deathbed, I'd think probably more about the time, the experience, the memories of the fun we had over the piece of metal that I've got hung up on the wall,
Well, I think I really understand that, because my version of that, I think, is, obviously I'm no Olympic medalist, but I remember after the Olympics, breaking down into tears at one point because just the reality sunk in. It's like, I achieved my lifelong dream, and I can't believe it. But then for a long time, and we're talking up until very recently, I would imagine, like, oh, well, what if I was never an Olympian? Like, so many things had to go right for me to get there. And so sometimes I look back on it and feel like, oh, wow, that almost feels like luck that so many of the things did go right. I achieved that at this right moment, etc. So I'd then, imagine a scenario where I wasn't at the Olympics. It'd be terrifying. I'd be like, oh my gosh, like, if I wasn't an Olympian, like, who would I be? And afraid that someone could take that away from me and what that would mean to me as a person. And it's been probably only within the last, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years that I've really managed to kind of disassociate from that a little bit. Like, I'm still enormously proud. Like you're saying, the medal is still an incredible thing. You're so glad to have the accolade, and same here. I'm so glad I even got to just be there and watch you, be a part of the team and watch you. But now if that was stripped away from me, I think I'd be much more fine with that. So I guess it's just it is about your own experience and realizing that. But
isn't it just so interesting how perspectives just like change and develop and adapt as you get older? Because I'm looking at Jack there, he's got his medals hung up on the wall, and like I don't know, it probably continues for about 4 meters beyond that point because there's so many, right? But growing up, it was always something that I was quite jealous of. Like, I was always, oh, this guy's going to all these competitions and winning medals all the time. Yes, money came with that, which was nice, but like, so many medals. And like, you had the medals hung up on the wall. I was like, that's so cool. And then I got like my first international medal. I was like, okay, I got this one. It's nice, but he has so many, and I was like so jealous. But then as time goes on, as you grow up, you do that, as you reflect on it, and exactly as Jack says, like you reflect on the time that you had and the experience, and it is just a piece of metal, and it's really no more than that. It's all about the experience.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I mean, I look at that wall very infrequently. I don't look at it all that often at all. And there's probably very few of them that I could tell you individual dives from or how the event went. But I could definitely tell you something about the trip. Some funny story that happened on that trip, or some little anecdote of that. And they are me. I think I've listened to your podcast before, and I've obviously talked to both of you, Fred and Yon. I know you've got differences of opinion, not opinion, but of who you want to be and who you represent yourself as people. And diving is a part of me, and it always will be. And I love that. For me personally, it represents dedication and hard work and motivation, and I'm extremely proud to be Jack the diver. There are obviously other elements to me, but those medals, they do mean a lot. But for me, it's always been about, ever since I was a kid, it's always just about having fun with my friends and enjoying the time that I've got in this wonderful sport, because I'm so proud to be a diver. I'm so proud to stand up there and be on top of the podium as well. But of course, I'm going to look back at my career when I do come to retire one day and be like, yeah, I did a lot of different things and the medals are great. But I'll always be forever thankful for the time that I've managed to have in the sport, and the friends and the enjoyment that I've had in being a diver and being competitive at the highest level. And we all have, we've all been there, and being able to do the thing that we love, our passion, the thing that everybody, when we were kids, it's like all we're probably known for is a kid that does backflips 50p, That's what we were. And I think that we were also lucky to be able to share that together. And that will be, when I finish, that will probably be the thing that I look at the most, that I'm proud of.
Oh, I love that. But it's so true. And I totally agree, Jack. But I think I do want to talk about actually a little anecdote from Rio specifically. Don't worry, it's not a bad one. But this is actually again to do with your event, because I remember individual. So you finished 12th in the semi-final.
Mm-hmm.
So the top 12 go through to the final. You finish 12th, a bit of a ropey event, right? And then you scrape through into the final. And I remember we go back to the apartment, because it's all the 5 Team GB boys staying in one apartment. We get back there, you're tired, like emotionally drained, like everything. And I remember you lying or sitting on the floor of the living room. Maybe there was a beanbag or something. You're like wrapped in a quilt and like, I don't want to do this final. And it was later on that day. And I remember putting myself in your shoes thinking like, whoa, yeah, I don't want to do that final either. Like, and I don't know how he's going to come from this.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen? Like, oh man, is Jack okay? Like, well, how can we support him? Like, blah, blah, blah. And then you go and finish second.
Mm.
And I just thought like, is still kind of insane to me. I mean, we all experience that as divers. Like, it's hard getting yourself back up, but that's such an extreme example. And so, I mean, how did you do that?
Well, yeah, no, it's difficult. Yeah, the prelims went really quite well. I think I was maybe like 4th or 5th or something like that in the prelims in really difficult conditions. I don't know if you remember, it was really, really windy that morning when we did our prelims, or afternoon, whenever it was. It was awful. Really windy.
Afternoon, yeah.
Yeah, it was, and a lot of good divers crashed out very quickly, Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was hard. I remember in the semi-finals, I remember looking over to you, Fred. Actually, I looked over because I'd done I think it was 4th dive at the time. It was triple out. Maybe front, it was my 5th dive. Like, I was near the end. And I landed really short because it was really bright sun. I couldn't see the water very well. And if I'm being honest, after the heights of winning a couple of days prior, I didn't really want to. Yeah, it's such a privileged position to be in. But I was like, I've done it. Like, what else is there? You know, it was really hard to reframe it and get back in. When I came back, I remember it this way: is that I scraped through. I'm really lucky. Got another chance, but I've got to reset.
At my expense.
Sorry, Yona. Someone's going to do it.
But I'm just glad you went on to get medals.
Yeah, well, that's it. At least it wasn't for nothing, eh? Yeah, I remember my last dive, I had back 3.5, and I was looking at the standings, and I thought, oh, I can still do this. You know, I thought it was done and dusted. I was going to finish 13th, 14th place. But I realized if I can just get 6.5, 7 on this last dive, I can get through. You know, I think I was 1 point behind 12th, and I knew the last dive of the person who was in 12th. Michele Benedetti, he had double out to finish. And I knew that it probably was going to be somewhere around 6.5. So if I just match that, I'm going to beat him because my dive's harder. And it was weird. That point was a turning point in a sense. It was like, oh, I can still do this. I've given up. Mentally fatigued from the success of the days before. Really struggling with conditions. Tired, not feeling 100%, but I can still do this was a big turnaround point. But I remember it being that I was going back to that flat to reset. You know, we were so lucky being in that apartment and being able to share that experience with like 4 or 5 of my closest friends, all in one place, which was just the best time. But I slipped. I had breakfast again. I reset as if the day had started anew, and it was just a brand new day and a brand new opportunity. And yeah, the final is, so this is like a really interesting little anecdote. In Tallahassee in the pre-camp before Rio, I was really struggling with my front and inward spotting. I was struggling, for those who don't know, I was struggling to see where I was when I was coming out of when I was spinning around and when I was coming out of the dive. I just had no idea what I was seeing. It was a really difficult environment to be in. And I broke down in the little room where the ice was. I remember just crying in the room. I was like, I'm not ready for this at all. You know, I think the haunting of 2012 mixed in with the emotions of being there and not being able to do anything was really difficult. And AD afterwards, my coach, decided to make, one of the things that could help was he made a big montage of all the times I've done those dives in and out of competition really well. And I am a big Phil Collins fan, which I get from my dad. And he decided for this, just classic 80s style, when he used to make these videos, he always used to put music over the top. He decided to put In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins on over the top. You know, just a random thought, didn't think anything of it. One of my favorite songs, he put it on, right? And I'm watching this back several times, and things start clicking in Tallahassee somewhat. We get to Rio, things are going well. You both know in the pre-competition training bit, they always play the same songs, right? They played the same songs throughout Rio. I never heard this song once until I was on my very final dive in practice before the competition started. Was In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins came on. It was the only time I ever heard it at the Olympic Games. And I was doing my last dive in the practice. And I remember coming up and it was just at that, that like drum solo part. And I remember like slapping the water. It sounds so stupid thinking back on it now, but you know, like the final drum part when it kind of comes, when the big crescendo kind of happens. I remember slapping the water and being like, yeah, this is it. Things are happening. And I think that the reset, my friends been around me, and then it really struck I could have just been like, oh, I love this song, but something triggered that emotion in my brain of like, yeah, I'm ready for this. It's not just a song, it's the kind of the videos that he'd put together made me think, yeah, I'm ready for this. I've got this. And that's, yeah, it was
when you just get that surge of energy.
Yeah.
I can imagine, like when you just feel it.
It's almost, yeah, it's so hard to describe because I'm not a religious man. I've never been a big believer in all that much, but you can feel it within yourself. You know, you can feel when sometimes the tables just turn, the switch just turns on. You're like, yeah, I know I've got this. And almost that innate belief without having to force it is just enough to get you over the line, you know. And I had a really good competition. I dropped one dive, and if I would have hit my triple out, you know, I might have won the whole thing. But you know, you know, ifs and buts, and, you know, you can never look back and worry about things that happened. And I spent an awful lot of my life worrying about things that never happened. I think that that's something you said earlier, Fred, was, you know, wondering about if I wasn't an Olympian. You know, I've had an awful lot of anxiety about wondering what if on things that just never happened. You know, I will always be a Olympic gold medalist, always be an Olympic silver medalist. And, you know, it's very easy to look back and wish for different, but yeah, everything fell into place just at the right time for me.
But I think the mindset is, you know, the power of the mind is amazing. And it's so hard to understand. And that's one thing I love about this podcast is getting other people's insights into these kind of questions. And for example, Bryony Page, who we interviewed on season 1, she was talking about her time in Paris, and she obviously became Olympic gold medalist. So this huge moment. But I remember her, I think it was right in the build up to the final, like right before the final. She was kind of, in her head, she was content with 5th or something. That's what she was kind of expecting. And she was telling us this story. And then suddenly she just like, wait a minute, what am I doing? Why am I content with 5th? That's ridiculous. And she just suddenly, right before the event, had this like change in her mind, and clear, like maybe similar to what you're describing, this energy then comes back in. And she goes on to win it. And I was just like, that is so interesting.
Yeah. The curtain's just open, right? That's it. It's like you almost get this like this clarity, this level of, this higher level of being able to tap in. It's almost, you know, when disaster strikes, sometimes people just get this insane level of clarity in the order of how to do things and how to get themselves out of difficult situations. And competing is uncomfortable. It's not an enjoyable thing for a lot of people. And I think it can be quite fight or flight. And I think sometimes when the conditions are right, and the Bryony, you know, just a shift in mentality. For me, something as stupid as a song just triggering something, you get that moment of clarity. And when you're in, that is literally being in the zone, isn't it? Is when everything is autonomous. There's no conscious thought. It's just happening. And I think that when you've got the vessel, my body, was capable of doing medal-worthy performances, when my mind was there with it as well, I guess it's just unstoppable at that point.
So do you think are you able to maybe summarize this really briefly? And if, for example, if I was to say, obviously you can't just summon it, but if you were to try and, in any situation, whether it's sport or even beyond that, do you think you'd be able to do certain things that would maybe help you get to that position? Or
I think the more I've tried to force it, the less it happens. The more I've searched for, you know, I could listen to that song again pre-competition, and if that was the answer to all my woes, I think I would be this unstoppable force. But it's not as simple as that. You know, I've talked about it a lot. The stars have to align somewhat. And without the hardship of me being in Tallahassee, you know, I'd have heard that song in the final and thought nothing of it. But because I was terrible at diving in Tallahassee, Adi made this video. And then it had connection to that exact moment when I was at my lowest of low, and I had this connection of something higher. I also was in the prime of my life. I had my best friends around me. I'd already become an Olympic champion. I scraped through to the final. All these perfect things aligned for me to do a good performance there. And the same for synchro as well. And I think that the more you try and force it, the more unnatural it becomes. And therefore, the further from the zone that you are. The zone, being in the zone is such a free flow state. You know, it's very, very, time passes very quickly. You don't even realize. you have almost no perception of really what's going on, yet you're so in control of everything else. And it's such a strange place to be, but the more you force it, the further you are from it.
So it's simply like taking advantage of a almost fortunate situation where things just do happen to align.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, you have to have the ability to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I think it's about having the ability to take advantage of it and being aware of those potential things that can help. I think that if I'm really in my head, I don't give myself any chance to recognize those potential signs that could flick me out of it. I think the fact that I had such great support around me meant that, and because of my previous competitions, good and bad, meant that I was in a certain mind state and a certain mindset that I was able to pick up on these things really well. I also had, someone alongside me, my coach, Adi, who believed in me through thick and thin. And I had all these people that supported me in everything I did. And it gave me that opportunity to be in that best position to do so. But I think that being able to pick up on those signs and being able to, yeah, it's a feel thing. It really is. The difference between me scoring 550 and 300, it's not physical necessarily, especially at that point. It wasn't a physical thing. There was very little fluctuation in how physically adept I was. For me, it was just about getting up here right on the day was the big difference. And yeah, everything came together in Rio and I was able to pick up on the signs that helped me put those pieces together.
So interesting. Another thing that you said in a conversation we had relatively recently, actually, which I thought was also super interesting, was I think you said that as time's gone on, suddenly you've yes, the things that happened in London, sure, when you were very young, but you kind of learned and bounced back from that very quickly. You've actually felt like the pressure, has, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you said the sort of the pressure increased as you got later on into your career, and obviously now you're Jack Law, 4-time Olympic medalist, and all these just infinite amount of accolades, and so actually now one of the challenges has been managing that new identity and the pressure that's come with that. Is that
yeah, completely? Right? It's completely fair and true as well. Is I have really struggled with self-image and how I perceive myself, and almost to my detriment is how my perception of myself. I see the accolades as a burden on me as a person, rather than the how great they are. I think I look at it. I often find myself falling down to this. Is that I look at it as people expect something of me because I am whatever list you want to use. And then I feel like I'm going to fall short of that. And I feel a pressure from thoughts in my head about thoughts in someone else's head, which I don't know. And I have this issue where I think people think a certain way of me, and I really struggle to live up to that, to be as good as I want to be for this imaginary thought in this person's head that I don't have a clue. Whereas the flip side of that is being content with who you are and what you've done, and almost using that as your shield, your armor of, yeah, I've won the Olympics, I've won the Commonwealth Games, I've won all these other things. And it doesn't really matter how, I don't have to show anything to anyone else anymore. I don't have to prove myself. I think when I was younger, there was a lot of wanting to prove myself and wanting to be who I could be. And now I seem to wear those medals as a burden, almost in a way. The phrase "heavy is the head that wears the crown." It comes with a lot of responsibility, a lot of pressure, all of which is fabricated by me at the end of the day. You know, I just want to be Jack the Diver and enjoy myself and do well. All of this is fabricated by myself, but I've really struggled along the way with being who I am, what I've done.
You kind of saying all that in this context like makes me genuinely reflect on our conversations and interactions throughout that whole process. You know, kind of after Rio through to Tokyo, Paris. It makes me reflect on it in a very different way to how I would normally, because you know the whole medals are a burden thing. It's almost baffling from me as someone who is so close to you, who has won a few medals. Never mind someone who is miles away from this kind of arena. It's crazy to think in that way. But also, you know, as you say, you've taken on a lot of responsibility and you've done a lot of really, you know, great things. You know, sitting on the chair of the vice chair of the World Aquatics Athletes Committee and being that person, that voice, and you know, standing up for things that you believe in. I mean, you're never one to hold an opinion about, that's for sure. But doing that on the highest level on the world stage is, you know, that's a huge responsibility that you've taken on as well. And you wouldn't have got into those places without what you achieved, because people trust you and people believe in you. But that kind of, I think, summarizes who you are in terms of your approach to the sport, in terms of your approach to being excellent within the sport. It is, even though you've got these things that feel like a burden, you're still willing to take on the responsibility. You're still willing to be that figurehead. So how do you sustain that feeling of excellence, that level of excellence, that desire to continue at the highest level through the next 3 years to LA?
Yeah. No, I mean, thank you, obviously. Yeah, you know, you're right. I've never been a person to hold my opinions back on things, and I've always pushed for what I believe is right, and I've always tried to stand up for people who I believe are, you know, a minority or a minority voice. I've always wanted to help people, and I always want to leave my sport in a better place than I started. And I really enjoy being the person I am with the responsibilities I have, and being the person that people on poolside, whether they know me or not, feel comfortable to come up and speak to, and be that somewhat middleman between the upper echelons of world aquatics and us lowly peasant divers. You know, I think that I really like being that person. I take a tremendous amount of pride in being the voice of not only myself, but of the athletes. And I think fundamentally I'm a different person to when I was growing up. And I think that moving forward, I have to adapt to being a competitor as who I am now, rather than being the fiery, wanting to take the world on kid, wanting to prove everybody wrong. You know, my values and how I am as a person, a lot of them are the same as when I was a kid. But I think that I've fundamentally just changed as a person since Rio. You know, I have a lot of the same interests still, but who I am as a person, I think, has become far more well-rounded, and I think that I wouldn't say I've lost that fire and drive, because that's not true at all, because I still love being competitive, but the drive has just shifted slightly. And I think I need to get better at being able to adapt to that. I think that I still want to compete like I'm that 20-year-old with, you know, everything to prove. I have to shift to being a 30-year-old who's got 4 Olympic medals and is going for a 5th Olympic Games, and is fundamentally a different person to how I was before. People see me differently. People look at me differently. and I have to be better at navigating competition whilst being a different person. That's how I get to the final point of LA and hopefully being on the podium once again, is by being able to navigate competition, stress, nerves better as a different person, rather than relying on routines and my own prejudices of competition from the past. I think it all shifted massively in my brain when I was a flag bearer for Commonwealth Games. That was when it was like, I think that I really realized that I am now not just, I'm a different person. I think that people's opinions of me is now different. And I think it all kind of caught up to me at Birmingham 2022.
You have such a unique perspective, I think, against, versus a lot of athletes, because as you say, that is four Olympics, and, heading towards, with goals to go towards your fifth one. And through that, you've gone from being a teenager to now into your 30s through that time period. So they're very interesting changes in your life, just in general as a person anyway. And there's been every high and every low sort of within that, but always with really amazing results and comebacks and all sorts of things. I know we've kind of just breezed past Tokyo and also Paris, but again, like, I think, massive kind of roller coasters and challenges leading up to those, but then still performing, and so I just feel like that. Do you feel like that those experiences must have the totality of that? I know you're saying obviously you're wearing the medals as a bit of a burden, and that's so interesting, and I think you saying that is going to help loads of people just hearing that. But that journey you've been on, that very few people can say that they've lived that sort of experience, there must be so much packed into there, and for you personally, that as you get older, it is, after wisdom, right? And so, yes, you're not that like fiery 20-year-old that wants to show the world, but there's got to be an equally, but even maybe more powerful position that you're potentially in now, or
yeah, it's different. I can only describe it as different. Day to day, I am still me. The other day at the pool in Ponds Forge, one of the lifeguards, just random comment to one of his swimmers that he was teaching, basically said, "Oh, he's an Olympic champion." And I was like, laughing it off, like, "Oh, one of the lads will ever, ha, ha, ha." But I think that although that superficially is there, I think deeper down, I am just a different person now. And I think that I look at those accolades completely differently to when I was a kid, was younger. And it's only been 10 years. And, I look back, and when I was 21, I thought, yeah, I'm an adult. I think everybody always thinks that I'm an adult at 18, I'm an adult at 21, all this thing. But I think I'm just constantly evolving as a person. And I would like to think it's wisdom. Who knows? In fact, I'd like to think it's wisdom and experience. I think maybe experience is just the better word. I've outlasted everybody now. There's not a single person from 2012 left. There's only Lois left from Rio. I've outlasted everybody, and I've got so much experience, and a lot of the experience from competition I use in everyday general life, training, everything. I use that experience, and I try to use it in competition as well. But again, like I said, I'm a different person now, and I think that going back to Singapore, my upsetting individual has made me put into perspective things that I need to think about to be better at competing. I still want to be a competitor, and I've still got that fire and drive to be the best. I know I can still be really, really good. But yeah, things have changed, and you know, life is different, and you grow, and the things that you cherish and care about the most, they change. You know, when I was a kid, I cared most about being the best diver I could be, but now I've got a wonderful family. I've got great friends who, you know, I'm so grateful for every day, and I think just the things that I care about have shifted, and I think that, yeah, there's been so many highs and so many lows, but I've gained a lot of experience from them all, and I hope that I'm a better person for that.
I'll be honest, like obviously coming into this recording, knowing you very well, and but also seeing your evolution, your development, and your progression over these years, and the way that our conversations have changed. I didn't 100% know what to expect from what we'd get in this recording. Like, you know, with the three of us, I didn't know like which way it was going to go.
Yeah.
Like it could have gone many different routes, but the way it's gone has actually surprised me quite a lot. But I feel like that really shows the person that you've become now, and it's like a real authentic version of you now. If we did this conversation 5 years ago, it would have been totally different. But it's been super interesting for me to hear, and it's allowed me to reflect on a number of things as well, because, you know, as I say, we've been on that journey with you. I've been on my own journey throughout my career, and I feel like we've always been reasonably well aligned. But it's really cool to hear like the kind of summary from your perspective, which kind of fills in some gaps that I didn't maybe know or didn't really think about enough. So, I mean, I appreciate you you kind of sharing that in that way, and yeah, I'm glad that we've been able to have this conversation. It's just nice, isn't it?
Yeah, and
It's just nice.
I think that I still love tapping back into the old Jack. You know, I love being that.
Oh yeah,
And day to day, most of the time, if you see me on poolside, I am that person still. I still love to have a laugh. I still love being inappropriate. I still love having a good time and just enjoying myself and my life. And the thing that I've learned is probably this side more, is being able to be reflective of where I am, what I've got, and what I care about most. And I think that's just natural life progression. You know, all of us though, if you look back 10 years, we're all different people. We've all changed massively. But the beauty of the sport and the genuinely the friendliest sport I think you could ever encounter, really. You know, we've all managed to share those together. And although our paths have changed physically with me and Yoni, you know, you moving up to Edinburgh and me staying in Leeds, and Fred, obviously, you retiring and going all over the world. The beauty of the sport and being so connected from such a young age has meant that we're all so close together. So I think that although we've all grown like in our own ways, we've all grown together still, which has been really nice. And I think that now we're able to have these conversations where we're able to be a bit more reflective on life and look back at the positives and negatives and where we are now.
it's beautiful.
Shut up.
all that, like, you know, we just built
Yeah.
up and just
Yeah,
Yeah, it's kill the moment. Absolutely.
Although I think in the, you know, once we get into the brief little Patreon section, it'll all go out the window anyway. So
Yeah, absolutely.
but Jack, I mean, I was gonna also say if you had any final words for this last section, but I feel like that was quite a nice recap. But I also wanted to just ask, you know, where can people find you before we close this main episode?
Where can people find me?
Follow your journey.
Just cutting around Leeds. No, people can find me in West Yorkshire, in Yorkshire for the rest of my life. This is where I will be forever, in the place that I love the most.
Yorkshire.
Yeah, no, I love this part of the world, and I will always be here. But in what you're asking for, people can obviously find me on Instagram, on X, Twitter, whatever it is. I've done a few YouTube videos a while back that you can watch. They're pretty good, I think, but I've stopped doing them because I just can't bother to do them. They get in the way of everything. And yeah, you can just find me on poolside. If you're a diver, come chat to me. I'm really not as scary as people seem to perceive me as a person. But yeah, please talk to me and hopefully gain some experience.
Please talk to
Please
me.
talk to me. I'm begging. Please be my friend.
Oh god.
Oh man, well, honestly, Jack, thank you so much. Like I said, and like what Yona was saying as well, you know, we weren't necessarily sure where this would go, but I really appreciate how open and honest you've been, and I think so many of the things you've said from someone of basically, you know, the highest level of sport and an athlete can be, being so open and sharing some of the things you shared, I think that's really going to help a lot of people, and you know, even me, I've learned and realized a lot today, and so yeah. So thank you. And that is where we will wrap this episode up. So yeah, Jack, thank you so much again for joining us. If you're listening on Patreon, don't go anywhere. Jack's sticking around for one more dive. And if you're not with us on Patreon yet, come join us for extra stories. The link's in the show notes. So we'll catch you on the next one.